You saw him happy with someone else, and you were not intentionally stalking. Well, you told yourself you were just checking, take a look, just a quick look. Maybe you even had a reason, like a mutual friend posted something, maybe some notification came up, and or algorithm did something, and suddenly there he was on your screen, living his life, maybe laughing, maybe on a boat or at a restaurant, maybe standing somewhere, and you looked, you zoomed in, and you studied the details the way a forensic scientist studies a crime scene. Because in a way, that's exactly what it was, a crime scene. Crime of him still existing, still moving, still being him in a world where you are trying to rebuild yourself without him. And it's hard to say what you felt, not exactly sadness or anger, something that sits in that specific place just beneath your sternum, like a knife that got in, like a sound you can't unhear. So that's what we're talking about today, that feeling. And more importantly, what it's actually telling you, that pain of seeing him happy, maybe even with someone else. What happens in those moments? Well, you see the picture, and your nervous system, and of course not your rational mind, your nervous system fires off a rapid sequence of questions that happen so fast you don't even realize you're asking them. Is he happy without me? Am I already replaced? Does he even miss me? Do I still mean anything? Who is that woman next to him? Who is he smiling at like that? How is he already smiling? And then comes the inventory. You examine the photo like a text that you're trying to decode. You notice things: who's standing close to him, how he's holding himself, whether he looks different, whether he looks better, whether he looks worse, and what it means that part of you is almost relieved if he does look worse. And you zoom in on details at his face, who's around him. You analyze the body language of strangers in a photograph because some part of your brain is desperately trying to answer the question it's been sitting with since this ended. Did I actually matter? That's what all of it is. Underneath the jealousy, pain, anger, that is that one question. Did I matter to him? And when you can't answer it, when you don't get to answer it, when the story ended without the ending that you needed, your nervous system keeps checking and scanning the screenshot you took and then deleted. That is not crazy behavior. That is a nervous system doing exactly what nervous systems do when they haven't found resolution. They look, seek, try to find something in the external world that will quiet that internal noise because you have unfinished business. Here's something I want to tell you. When you looked at that photo, when you really looked at that photo, what did you see? Often in those moments, something else happens alongside all the knife feeling. Something your psyche doesn't announce because it's a quiet shift. You maybe start seeing him as ordinary. And maybe it's something small, the way he's dressed, the way he's holding himself, something about his face, something about the way he looks in regular life without your longing making him larger than life. You see, maybe for the first time, with clear eyes, just a man, a regular, aging, flawed, ordinary man. And that matters because for a long time, maybe longer than you want to admit, you weren't seeing him. You were seeing the version of him that lived in your imagination, the one you were trying to love into existence, the one you believed was in there somewhere waiting to emerge if only the conditions were right, if only he felt safe enough, or if only he fully chose you the way you needed to be chosen. And you were in love with a man who did not fully exist. And that's one of the most human things there is. That's what happened with us all the time. The fantasy and the real merge. When we fall in love, especially with someone complicated, someone who shows us glimpses, we do something interesting. We see their potential. We see who they could be, who they almost are, who they are in their best moments, when they're fully present, when something in the conversation cracks them open and you see something true, rare, and real. And then, even as those moments became rare, even as the patterns reasserted themselves, even as the same cycles repeated, and you found yourself again in the same painful place, again, you held on to those glimpses because they were real. You didn't imagine them. Those moments happened, and your heart said, this is who he actually is. Everything else is just fear or old wounds. If you could just get past all of that, he would be my person. I know he's there. And so you stayed. Not because you were foolish, but because not because you were weak, you were loving a potential, and hope is one of the most powerful forces the human heart can generate. But here's what I need you to hear. People do not change because someone loves them hard enough. It's a fairy tale story. People change when they themselves decide to do the internal work, when they choose growth, and that's the only mechanism. Love, even the biggest, most extraordinary love, cannot change a person. And the version of him that you were loving, the one who would eventually break through his own limitations, he required him to choose that, not you to love it into existence. And you were not wrong to see good in him. You were not wrong to believe in him, but you were loving in part a man who didn't yet exist. So when you see him in that photo, looking happy, looking light, maybe looking like he's moved on faster than he had any right to in your mind, part of what makes it so painful is the fear underneath the pain. What if he changed? What if she's the one who finally got the real version? What if I was the problem all along, and now that I'm gone, he's free to be who he really is? Trust me, he hasn't transformed. He's not a different man. He is not the potential you saw in him. He did not unlock his potential. He's not healed because some new person arrived. He is the same man in a new scene. The patterns that were present in your dynamic, that ambiguity, inconsistency, the way he couldn't fully choose, the way he defended himself from real intimacy, and things repeated themselves no matter how many times you moved through them, those did not live with you. They live in him and travel with him. They will meet the next person he gets close to. And he's not a bad person, but he has some patterns that are, well, most likely pathological and structural. They're wired into his nervous system. They were there before you arrived, and they will stay with him. And the woman in that photo, if there is any, is not getting the healed version of him. She's getting the raw version, the one you also got. She's getting the same version you got. Just, maybe it seems nice right now, but wait until real intimacy is required, until his wounds get activated, and until he has to choose between his defenses and real vulnerability. And you already know what happens then. But she doesn't know yet, because part of you loved him enough to want him to actually be different, to actually become the man you saw in him. And he is not. And that is its own kind of loss for you. So that knife in your stomach that you feel when you see him all of a sudden on a picture with a new girl, let's go back to that feeling, that physical gut level fire when you saw the photo. That is your nervous system responding to something it experienced as a profound threat to your sense of reality. Because here's what losing someone who never fully validated your experience does to you. It leaves an open wound. Not just the wound of missing them, a deeper wound. The wound of having your reality being questioned and having your love being questioned, having your perception of what was real between you also being questioned. You don't understand. Did he love me? Did he not? Was it real? Was it not? Because when you told him what you felt and he responded by telling you that you were wrong, that you didn't really love him, that you misunderstood him, and that your perception was off, something very specific happened. Your inner reality was invalidated. And that is one of the most destabilizing things that can happen to a human being, because we need our inner reality to be witnessed, to be recognized. When our inner reality is denied, when someone looks at your experience and says that's not real, that didn't happen that way, something in the nervous system registers it almost like erasure, like you were almost made not to exist. And so when you see him now, laughing, fine, part of what fires up is that wound that says he moved on and he never even acknowledged what happened. He never saw it. He never said, I hurt you. I know I hurt you. What was real between us was real, and I'm sorry, deeply sorry that I hurt you. And if you're honest with yourself, you're not just waiting for him to come back. You're waiting for him to understand and say, I see what I did. I see what I had. I see what I let go of, and I'm sorry. Because if he could say that, if he could see you, your nervous system believes it could finally breathe out. Here's what I need to say, something that can sound hard, that recognition you were waiting for, you may never get it. And most likely you won't get it because the person who hurt you may not be capable of the kind of self-reflection that recognition requires. And that is a limitation in him. But the trap is that your healing is dependent on his understanding. If you can only truly let go once he says the right words, then your freedom is being held hostage by his level of emotional development, and you do not control that. And you should not be controlled by that. And you cannot wait your way into his recognition. He may spend his whole life not fully understanding what he had, not fully understanding what he did, not fully understanding the impact of the way he loved or didn't love you. And if you wait for that understanding before you allow yourself to heal, then in a very real sense, you're still giving him all the power. Your healing has to become independent of him. Not because you are forcing yourself to become like not caring person, but because you need to come to understand your pain is real even if he never sees your pain, and your love was real even if he denied your love. What happened was real even if he never acknowledges it, and you deserve to be free, not when he finally gets it, but just because you deserve to be free. Of course, it will happen with time and small moments when you catch yourself and choose yourself, when you think about him, but you choose yourself instead. Of course, there will, for a while, be a part of you that still hopes, and maybe you can't even discuss it with your friends or family anymore because everyone is tired. But there's this hope that maybe he'll realize, maybe he'll reach out. And do not hate that part of you. That part is not weak or crazy. She is the part of you that loved deeply enough that she can't just switch it off. And that capacity for deep love is one of the most beautiful things about you, even when it is painful. And also about hope, you don't kill it with force. You can't you can't just cut off, the hoping part of you. It doesn't work that way. And shaming yourself for still caring also doesn't work. What works is you notice the hoping part, you acknowledge her, you even honor what she was reaching for, because what she wanted was beautiful. She wanted to be truly chosen. She wanted to be seen. She wanted a love that could hold her without flinching. And then gently, you don't feed that hope with actions. You don't check his profile. You don't analyze the photos. You stop checking. You don't run mental simulations of conversations. Because every time you do those things, you're sending your nervous system back into the wound. You are reopening your wound instead of letting it heal. You can say, I still hope a little, and I am building my life anyway. The refusal to organize your whole existence around him, that is what healing is. And I want to address something you may have told yourself in some dark moment, that all of this pain, all of this attachment, all of this difficulty letting go means that something is wrong with you. that you are too much, or you're too intense, or that you love in a way that's unsustainable. But please hear me clearly. You are capable of deep, sustained attachment. You are not someone who cannot love or cannot be loved. You're not someone who destroys every relationship she touches. You are not impossible. What you are is someone with a particular nervous system who has low tolerance for ambiguity in love. You can't be almost chosen. You can't be in that emotional inconsistency when you're constantly anxious. Is he in, is he out? Does he want me? Does he not? You are the woman who needs to be chosen clearly by someone who's emotionally consistent. And when you don't have to constantly recalibrate whether you're safe or not, you need a partner whose love doesn't feel like a test that you might fail at any moment. And the fact that the relationship you're grieving couldn't give you those things, that is the relationship's limitation. That is not your limitation. So let's say you see him with his tan and his ordinary life and his aging knees and his patterns, and you're here doing the hardest thing there is, feeling that feeling instead of numbing it, asking the questions instead of avoiding them, looking at yourself with enough honesty to see both the wound and the part that is slowly, quietly becoming something more. The photo hurt. Of course it hurt. It probably will hurt for a while, because healing from a bond like this is not linear and doesn't follow a schedule. But what I want you to notice is when you looked at that photo, when you really looked, you saw him more clearly than you ever did when you were inside that, fog of loving him. You saw an ordinary man, you saw the gap between who he is and who you needed him to be. And even in the pain, even in the fire in your chest, something in you knew, this is not what I deserved. Hold on to that knowing. It is your compass, because that knowing is the beginning of real freedom. The freedom of finally choosing yourself. If you saw a photo today, if you felt that knife, if you zoomed in and deleted and felt ashamed that you did, you are a woman who loved someone with her whole self inside a dynamic that couldn't hold that love. And now you're in that part of the story, the part after the ending, where you have to figure out who you are when you're not trying to be enough for someone who didn't want to fully meet you. And that part is hard. And you are in it, which means you are moving through it. And that matters more than you even know right now. If this spoke to you, please share it with someone who needed to hear it today. And trust me, time heals everything. And there will be a moment when you look at his picture and you do not feel any pain. This moment will come.